Alright, new week, new tutorial, and this time we're going to remember the old times when we had the first Marvel vs. Capcom 1, where Spider-Man, just flashes before the camera and says, "Hey, one for JJ." You sure remember those times, right? So we're going to create an animated feature with this character, and we're going to rig it in Blender using grease pencil and bendy bones, because why not? And here you can see the result of the rig. You can also please consider to subscribe and give a like onto my channel so you can receive more notifications when I upload new videos. So let's begin. The first thing we
Thumbs
want
up,
to do
soldier.
is to somehow reference the Spider-Man that we're going to be drawing. In our case, it's this sprite in this exact pose from the original game. And now we're going to create a new grease pencil object. We're going to name it Spider-Man. After that, we're going to drag and drop the image that we just saw, and we're going to move it into the y-axis, which is actually depth here on Blender. So the second thing that we're going to do is to go into the image properties and then select use alpha, so that way we can drive the transparency, because right now it's not doing anything. So check use alpha and now drive the transparency and we're fine. So that's going to be our reference again to trace over a new grease pencil layer. So just click on show settings up here on the top toolbar. In that way we can get all the necessary tools, just like a 2D application. That's what we're looking for. So if you read the instructions, you can manipulate the entire canvas or the workspace. In this case, please take a moment, pause the video, take a moment to read it all, because I'm going to be doing all these shortcuts without really explaining with my voice, so you need to know them by heart now. Alright, so let's create a new layer. So we're on the properties of the grease pencil object. Click on new layer. Oh, before that, let's name this grease pencil object at object level Spiderman GP. So now I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to name it sketch. After that, I'm going to create a new material, clicking this plus sign up here and then this plus sign down here, because this is going to create this at object level again. And now I'm going to call this sketch pencil. And I'm going to use a light blue color because I like it so. And I'm going to select draw ink as my preset brush for this occasion. You can see all of the top toolbars options display everything that we can do with that specific brush. So that's nice. Now check this one. Check this little icon, this little pen icon, to get the sensibility from your Wacom tablet or your digital tablet. So I'm going to draw first the eye. Remember, I'm just doing this as a reference. This is just a sketch, a freestyle sketch. Okay, you don't have to have perfect lines or anything as a final drawing, because we're going to do that on the next stage. So press F to define the size of the brush. In our case, we're going to click the eraser tool and now F to define the size. You can also find the size all the way up into the toolbar. So I'm going to accelerate this video because drawing is pretty much linearly done. And let's sketch this here and over here. So we have our sketch. Now I'm going to create a new layer which is called solid line. Alright, I'm going to be playing with the opacity from the original sketch layer on the grease pencil object. Now I'm going to be creating a new layer just like I did before, and this is going to be called solid black line, or for short, just black line layer. Perfect. Now I'm going to create a material. So I come here to the material settings, and now I select my black ink. or black stroke material. So we see additional tools over here that will help us to draw. And in this case, I'm going to be selecting this one, which is a kind of a curve or open curve, if I could say so, where we can manipulate these points, these yellow points as the beginning and the end, and the cyan dots, which will help us drive the curve. And if you have a cross section like this, don't worry, there's another tool to delete that cross section, but it's called a knife or cut tool, intersection tool. That's pretty awesome. You just circle select that with that tool and it just deletes it. So whenever you're drawing with this curve tool, you just draw up and down, actually click and drag up, click and drag down, and then you get different results depending from which angle you do, and then you press enter to confirm the transformation. So that's pretty nifty because you don't have to have a perfect hand to draw. You just draw the segments and they get done very much fluently. So you also have eraser modes for different tasks, like this one for example, just erase then the entire stroke, and the other one just deleted or erased just the segment where it was hovering by. So again, I'm going to select my tool, my curve tool. In this case, I'm going to be adapting this for the eye. And now the first question of using this software arrives. If this is 2D, what is going to happen if I'm drawing with vertices? Aren't vertices supposed to be doing like a shape, like a closed shape, like a closed vector shape? Because as a matter of fact, you can see the vertex right here. If you go into edit mode and press this outliner options that you have here for your object, in this case, you can see that those are vertices. So if you want to join them to close the shapes, you have different possibilities by pressing F, by selecting two points that are near, and then press F to fill, or Control J to join, or Alt M to merge, or just right click and then use the option from the mouse as merge points. You can also delete the points because they are very close and you don't know what is going on, so you can do that as well. So in this way we're closing our shape. So you may be thinking, okay, so now I need to close every gap I left. Well, not necessarily. I'm just doing this because in time I'm going to show you what advantages you have when you try this method. And if you don't like this way to paint, you can also try the boundary method, which is whatever stroke you did, the fill is going to stop at that point. But I'm just showing you that this is possible and that you can create a closed grease pencil object, because in case you would like to extrude this or convert this later on your project, you can do it so. But if it's an open line, then it will not close, and obviously the object will not have thickness if you are pretending to transform this later on in your project. But in my case, I just want to close it up because, you know, Spiderman's lenses are shaped this way. Now, in order for you to make the F key work, you need to apply the add-on F2, which is Fill Faces, and you will find it on your preferences, add-ons, on the search bar, type F2 and then just mark that add-on. So that's the way it works. And from here on, you can see all the way down here on the screen that I'm going to be using different shortcuts, so you can pause the video and check what I was doing here. So the first thing we're doing right now, just to recap, is to create a complete outline of Spiderman. And there are some open lines and other closed lines, so I'm going to be using this spline or curve tool. I just draw and then press enter to accept or to confirm the transformations. Now we're going to explore the sculpt mode. I'm going to be doing a circular shape. So I'm going to select this tool, press enter, and then I'm going to switch into the sculpt mode. And I'm going to press G for the grab tool, and now I'm going to move this as if I was sculpting, and this is just marvelous. This just opens up so many possibilities for you as an artist doing this inside Grease Pencil in Blender. Look at that. This is just a circle that is being deformed, or rather pulled, by this tool, which is grab. Marvelous. Perfect. Let's go for the rest of the fingers, but in this case I'm just going to free draw right here. So no matter if you trace over the same line 2 times or 3 times, because all of those lines are going to be steel boundaries for when the fill tool is applied. But I don't like to leave these kind of jagged vertices here, so let me just put this in a more organized way. So let's continue to draw the rest of the body on the black line layer. And now let's go for the spider. I enter into edit mode, press A to select all into that layer, or you can also use control right click to circle select or lasso select rather. Now, how many times when you were younger you did try to draw Spider-Man, but you really hated to do his mask lines? How many of you can raise your hand? Guilty as charged. And here Blender is going to offer us a better way to create those lines. If I draw from left to right or right to left, depending on the result, the curve switches position. So in our case, we're going to start from right to left, and it's going to draw the curve downwards. If we draw the line from left to right, it's going to draw it upwards. So in our case, we want to do up until this point, this kind of mesh, or rather line deformation. Isn't this neat? And just that easy, you have already created all your lines. You can also enter edit mode and select each individual line. But with the curve tool, you can see it's pretty much easy to do those lines. Look at that. It's just perfect. It works. And there is no jagged line. There is no distorted lines. So you can do this with much confidence. But seeing that these lines are very much closed, they are making Spider-Man look a little bit creepy. Let's distance a little bit those web lines on the mask. So perfect. Let's complete this task, and now we have his mask. Marvelous. Let's name this. This is spider body line. So into that layer, I'm going to be drawing. I'm going to pick spider lines. I'm going to pick that layer. I'm going to go back to spider body lines to complete the rest of the lines, just the way you were watching right now. So once I have that, took a long time. I accelerated this video like for around an hour on doing that. I'm going to create a new layer which is called the red color layer, and here we have additional options, and I can send this layer top or down using these little buttons here. So now I'm going to create a new material which of course will be the red material tint or the red color. Okay, it's not going to be a stroke, it's going to be a fill. You also have options here to do the fill, but in my case I'm going to use just a solid color, so I can have it right here on my palette on my top bar. And now let's see, I'm going to select the bucket, the paint bucket tool. It's the only one available, and now here you can select either strokes or edit lines. but we're going to leave it at strokes. So that intersects the line and the fill. If you can see it, that's the way it works. It stops filling when it finds a line. So you can also draw lines to close the gaps using, or pressing rather, Alt and then left click to draw. I'm sorry, Alt and yes, and left click. So that way the bucket changes to a pencil momentarily so you can close your gaps. So let's continue using the fill tool as intended. So I'm going to fill every little space right here because we're going to paint this guy. And of course, this is a grease pencil object that it's got some layers already. And one of those layers is receiving this red material tint color. That layer is called the red color layer. You can see it on the list. And if you saw that big red square, that was because there was a gap and it was not closed, so it will not fill the entire Blender application. It will just fill until where the boundaries of the view or the boundaries of the camera are. So don't worry about spilling your fill tool. Not a problem. Now we're going to select the blue color, and I want to take that blue color directly from the reference, from the image reference. So I'm going to switch on the image reference and switch it back to alpha 100%. And with that, I should be able to use the picker to select Spiderman color. So I'm going to go back to draw mode by selecting the grease pencil object, going into the materials, clicking here, and then here's the picker. I'm selecting this color from his pants, and now I'm switching off the reference. I'm going back to the grease pencil object on Spiderman, and obviously I'm going to work on the blue color layer. Once there, I select the fill tool, and now you see the tool is filling up correctly. Oops, again, another spill. Let's check out. No, okay, it's working there. Perfect. Now the pants, see, it only fills until the area where the camera stops. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to define the mask. Okay, and then please save your work, of course, because we're going to be doing some other processes and we don't want to lose all this hard work that you've done. So the next thing I want you to notice, it's the next thing I want you to notice is that we need to rename the collection so that we can identify everything we're doing in this file, because it's gonna get big pretty quickly. So the best thing to do is to organize the names. Now I'm going to walk you through a simple example of how you can create masking. Okay, so you're going to have DI in the white color layer. I'm going to create another one called white shade, because in this layer that I'm going to be drawing the shade that I want to apply onto the layer below. So I'm going to create a new material, of course, first of all, with a fill around that kind of blue, very tinted blue shade. And now I'm going to draw. If you see, I'm drawing past the boundaries, but with this little button right here, you can clip the boundaries from whatever it's down below that layer. So that means that whatever is on top is going to be clipped by whatever it's under it. So you can see that in edit mode, I can go into edit mode and I can continue to edit the position of this clipped layer. Okay, so I like it that way, so I'm going to leave it right there. And now let's try this over the entire body. I'm going to create a new layer using the drop tool, using my general shade color, and now I'm going to draw in that new layer, which is called shader layer. Okay. Well, actually, I'm just using the same name, white shade. So now I'm going to send it to multiply mode, or rather change it to multiply mode. I can set it back to regular mode, and also I'm going to apply the trim layer option. So I'm going to put this at opacity of 70%, so I can see through the drawing. You can see right there, and you can do this effect the same for addition method. So you can have highlights, or in this case, I'm going to go with multiply, so I can have shades, darker shades on the body. It's working amazingly. It really pays off this entire time. Now let's work on the lines. I'm going to switch everything off, and I am only going to leave the black lines visible. That way, everything that this sculpt mode is going to do will be applied to all those visible layers. In my case, I want more thickness for the lines. So I'm going to select thickness as a tool. I'm going to leave those layers visible, and then I'm going to start drawing over. You don't have to press, you don't have to scratch once or twice. You just draw over it, and the longer time you stay on that area, the thicker the line is going to be inflated. All right? So it works wonderfully. So in this case, I can stylize the line. It's not a straight line anymore from what we got previously. And you can go here into the properties of the viewport for drawing. In my case, I switch it to a gray, kind of like the paper, the color of the paper, so I can see what I'm doing here, and it also feels more natural to work in a wider space. Okay, so we can see that the lines have been now redefined. They are pretty much bold in one side and finer to the other side, and that's what we wanted. And this is accomplished using the thickness line, or thickness tool, I'm sorry, from the sculpt mode. So this is just fantastic. If you don't like something, you can go back, you can inflate, you can redefine the lines, you can manipulate them completely, either at vertex mode or either at stroke appearance. So it's very nice. I mean, it's Grease Pencil is so much flexible than any other of the 2D vector softwares that I've encountered out there. Okay, so let's go back into the solid line, because we want to, refine some of the things right here. I just wanted to show you how you can switch the canvas by pressing Shift and numpad 4 to switch to the right, or to switch to the left, and Shift numpad 6 will shift to the right. Now if you want to focus or reset the view, just press 1, and this will bring you to front view. And if for some reason you just lost your Grease Pencil object, you zoom in a lot or very far, then you can just select your Grease Pencil object on your outline and then press numpad period, so that you can get focus again. So in this case, we have already flattened every other layer, and we only have this shadow shade and Spiderman color. That's what we wanted. Why didn't we work in this way before? Because it's methodic. Everything you do here is methodic. You need to first cover the first steps to make sure that you can have an editable file, and then later on you can manipulate or modify. So let's create now the bones. Now the idea here with the rigging of the bones is to create bendables, so we can bend the leg accordingly. So for this section, we draw approximately 5 mini sections. So I'm going to create this bone, which is going to be called the root bone, but in our case, we're not going to rename it just until the very end. So select the head, the pole, and the tail, and then right click, subdivide, make 2 cuts, and then again grab the tail on this bone and just move it all the way down until you can find the distance for the toe. and this one will go right here. The idea here is that this main large bone will be converted into a B bone. I'm going to select in front, and then the top bone is going to be switched to a parent bone. So how do we do that? Now, if you see here on this section, I'm going to clear the parent, Alt P by pressing Alt P, and then on the end handle, I'm going to connect it to bone 02. So that's what you do first to create bendy bones. There are a lot of tutorials out there to create bendy bones, and I'm just doing them right here, right now, so you can see how the application works. So in pose mode, you're going to go into the bone constraint menus, and you're going to apply a follow to, in this case, bone 02. Now I'm going to go back into edit mode. I'm going to go into pose mode so I can check if this is working, and it's working amazingly. Look at that. And now we can even define the display size right here on these properties for the bone, and also this one because it's pretty much small right now. So let's switch that. Perfect. Now we can grab this bone even better. That's a better controller. So again, I'm going to go back into edit mode. I'm going to Shift D, duplicate this. You can see the shortcuts down here. Remember to pause the video to check the shortcuts I'm doing. I'm selecting the middle section, right click on the mouse, subdivide into two sections. I'm going to select this right here to position this correctly. The tail right there. This is working. Perfect. So now I'm going to Alt P this bone. I want to cut the parent. I want to also create the sections on the B bone, the bendy bone. I'm going to create 5 sections on the bendy bone and then Alt P to separate the parenting. Why? Because we want to give the absolute bone relation to that parent, okay? And now, okay, I know that this is bone number 5, so I'm going to assign the end handle to 5. And then I'm going to put the stretch to constraint to that bone, which is number 5. And now let's test it out. On pose mode, you can manipulate the bone and you can see that it's moving accordingly. Let's go to the properties, and to the display size, we're going to switch just a little bit so it will match the other bone as well. Just copy paste and copy paste, and I have all the values corrected. So let's just switch this 0.5 and 0.3. It works better. 0.5, 0.3. Yeah, much better. So let's change the side on the toe as well. And the left toe also is going to be included. Perfect. So now let's go back to edit mode, or rather pose mode, because I want to know if this is working or if anything is going wrong. This is the time you break the rig. Before parenting, you need to break the rig. Alright, so let's go back to edit mode, Shift D. I'm going to be having another bone. In this case, this is going to be the chest bone and also the spine bone. Now, bendy bones, ever since I saw them for the first time, I knew the best thing where they will shine or they will excel would be at creating spines. So I'm selecting the middle section right now and then subdivide it into 2. Again, I'm going to go into, let me hide the Spiderman for a second. I'm going to grab this, press G and send that up, and press G and send this one down. Alright, so let's align it here, and let's align this one with G right there. So let's check out Spiderman again. Okay, I'm going to select the middle section now. I'm going to add around 3 or 4, yes, three segments are doing good. So Alt P for the top of the bone, so that separated from the parenting. And now I'm going to select this, and I'm going to select the end handle to be absolute to this bone, which is bone 09. I'm sorry, 0.8. And now I'm going to put a bone constraint to follow this bone 0.8. So that way, if I rotate it or if I move it, the spine is going to follow. That is what we want. That is exactly what we want. Okay, yeah, right there. Let's make this even thicker so we can control it better. Fantastic. Let's continue. See, this is not good. It's not working as intended. So we need to check those things out all the time. We need to see if the rig breaks or not. So it's correctly associated, nothing wrong. If you associate it with the start handle, then it's going to be inverted, and that's not what we want. So let's go back into pose mode. All right, it works. So yes, no problem there. It's very important that you pose the bones ever from the beginning. So again, I'm going to select this bone, Shift D, and then I'm going to create the neck. I'm going to be creating the sections of the head so that way we can also move the head when we are animating later on. Okay, I'm subdividing this section into probably two more sections. So we have 3 in total. And I'm not going to unparent or cut the parent here. What I'm interested most is in the neck, because we're going to rotate this neck, and we are also going to be parenting this to the chest bone. Marvelous. Okay, so here on the arm, we're going to try a different thing. We're going to try an inverse kinematic, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And let's go to edit mode. I'm going to Shift D this bone, and then I'm going to grab this part and place it right here. Okay, it's important that you do this because later on it will affect the way your transform is going to happen. So the next thing that we're going to do here is to Alt P that bone hand so that it's separated from the arm. It's not going to be part of the same change link. We only want just two simple IK chain here. Just a regular arm, nothing fancy. So let's switch to the right side of the view, because what we want to do is to create an IK controller. And I'm going to be selecting the middle section in the hand, which is right here. And then I'm going to be extruding that towards the left, which will be the front of the image. So I'm selecting that. I'm pressing E to extrude. I'm pressing E again, and then, pressing E and then lock it onto the Y-axis by pressing Y. Press the Y key, and then you will see that green axis going through the screen. That means that it's locked. So I've created the IK controller that we're going to be using. Another thing that is very important is that you delete the parent. It's not going to be parented to anyone. And also uncheck deform, because this bone is not going to be deforming. It's not going to be part of the vertex group information. So uncheck deform. So here we can see that the bone has been separated as parent, and it's not affecting anyone except him. So now we're going to also extrude this elbow, which is going to be the pole to drive this IK in the hand. So as you can see, if it's parented, which should be not, then it's gonna drive the entire change. So let's just delete parent, like you just saw before, and like also this one that it's unparented. If you want to delete this, you will not be able to do that. So let's use every bone we have wisely. So the first thing we want to do is to um, clear the parent in this case, or rather parent it to where it's supposed to go, which is the end of the arm. Okay? So we need to correctly find a name. I'm going to be extruding this again. And now I know this is bone 14. So now I'm parenting this to bone 14. And also I need to tell this connected checkbox to drive this chain. Perfect. So let's continue. And one thing you should know about armatures is that they are all a container, self-container for elements. That means if you create an extra additional bone outside that armature, it's going to be an entire separate entity. So in this case, whatever you create inside the armature belongs to that hierarchy. Therefore, it can be parented between one another or have relations of parenting. So that is how this works. So now let's create this. I need the names for that. Let's go to post mode. I'm going to create the IK change. You can come here to tracking and then select obviously spline. I'm sorry, not spline. This is inverse kinematics. I'm sorry. To come to the bond constraint and then select inverse kinematics. That's it. So the target obviously is going to be the armature, and under the armature, the target is going to be bone 0. I think it was 8. I think it was 08. No, this is bone 17. That's right. So let's switch the name. Elbow RIK. That way I know how to identify the pole. So I'm going to be selecting this one. Whoops, sorry. not the one. Select the other one. Okay, this is my elbow pole, and this is the one that we're interested in. The hand RIK. So that way we don't lose track. So armature, hand IK. And the pole target, obviously, is going to be our elbow. Alright, so that's fixed. Whoops. Okay, armature again. Just like we mentioned before, it's an entire entity. And in this case, I'm going to switch the pole angle to 180 so that it will rotate accordingly. We used to do this in Softimage back in the old days as well. So the chain length for this IK controller is going to be 2, because I'm going to be selecting the first bone, which is the upper arm, and then the second one, arm itself. But it's going to be driven by an additional controller that I would like to use, which is that hand extrusion that we did there. And also the bones, the shape of the bones can be connected or changed to other shapes. So you can model something and then connect it there. Okay, like we mentioned before, every time you create an armature, the entire system is contained inside that structure for the bones, for the parenting, and also for the hierarchies, and also the constraints. So nothing outside that hierarchy can be added unless it's done properly by some other means, like joining them, Control J, and doing other operations. But right now, let's just check how our rigging setup is happening. Okay, so here's my bone. This is the bone that I'm going to be using to drive the IK, right? And this is the hand bone, which is going to have to be parented into this driving uh, bone that I have right here. So I'm going to uncheck this, and then I'm going to leave it free from any parent, and now finally it's moving appropriately because previously it was connected, so therefore it had a parent and therefore it wasn't going to be able to move. But now with no parent it's free, and that is exactly what we wanted. And the hand follows as well, so we parented the hand towards that controller. And now I'm going to create the shape which I'm going to be replacing there. So the original idea is that the shape of this circle is placed around here so I can touch it, and from there on I can rotate it or translate it. So let's just do that. Let me delete these, or rather let me see if it can work directly here. I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to edit a shape. I'm going to select every vertex, and then I'm going to press F to fill the faces. I'm going to put it here on the middle of the world where the 3D cursor is at. It's called the origin, the real origin. And I'm going to move it here. So let's model. I'm going to go into edit mode, press F, it fills the faces. I'm going to switch into vertex filter selection, and then I'm going to press I, and then I'm going to delete these faces. X, A, that's the shortcut to delete the faces. X, A. So I'm going to be assigning this a material just to show you that there are two possible ways to colorize this element into the viewport. And since Grease Pencil is using the real object color, I'm sorry, the material color and not the object color, then your choices are scarce. You need to switch the viewport appearance of this object so that you can identify it with a different color than the Grease Pencil object. So in our case, we're going to come here to the viewport display, and then I'm going to click here in front so that it will always display in the front, and then I'm going to choose the color, which is going to be a light green color. I want to identify this easily. So I'm going to switch from this to object color. As you can see, the color is reflected. It doesn't matter what kind of material it has, it's reflecting the viewport display color. And that is what I'm interested in. So here you can pick any color you want. In my case, I'm going to select the green one because that's the best contrast against red. I'm sorry, it's the best complementary color to red. So as you can see, if I switch here to solid view and I have object as the default drawing appearance, you can see the Grease Pencil object turns black. And of course, that is not convenient. So how do we change this bone into the actual shape that we just created? We come here into the properties of the bone while we are on pose mode, and then we go into the let me see, where is it? Not here, not here. We already unchecked deform because this is not going to be a deforming bone. Oh, I'm sorry, I was on edit mode. Here we go, pose mode. Select pose mode and then go to viewport display, and in pose mode viewport display you can select the object that we already created, and now we see that this is somehow not pointed to the right direction. So I'm going to enter edit mode I'm going to go into vertex selection filter, and then I'm going to press RX90 so that it will face upwards. But if it does, you can see immediately that it reflects on a black shape, and that is because the normals are inverted. You can either flip the normals or um, do a 180-degree turnaround on the object. That's what I did. So now we see correctly it's the green color object. And now the size is just a little bit too big, so let's switch that as well. All right, we have our controller there finally, and now we can manipulate it in pose mode so that it can drive the hand. So let's see. If I try to rotate, it's not rotating the hand. So let's go back into the edit mode, select this, and then I'm going to clear this parent so it's free from the arm and it will obey the controller. All right, perfect. It's working now. Oh, no, not working, not yet. Okay, so first select the hand and then the controller, make parent, and come on, yes, there it is. Now it's working. So always check what relations the bones have between each other. If they have parents, then obviously they are not going to move because they are somehow constrained to that parent. So make sure always that you have the right parent to be following with those connections. Okay, so our Spider-Man is finally finished, and we just have to go through one more bone. And we do this just to make sure that the weights are equally distributed among the body, because if we don't do this extra setup on the bones, then this part of the drawing is going to be assigned onto other bones that probably may really distort in a bad way this hard work you have been creating. Now, please don't forget that you have in the description below the link for this file if you want to study it, if you want to open it, if you want to create some awesome things or get new ideas. Feel free to download them. I'm not claiming any copyrights. I'm not claiming any rights. Their copyrights goes to the creators, of course. You know who they are, and I'm not claiming this work as mine. I'm just sharing this file so you can have a study on this. Sharing this as an exploration of a concept. All right, so it's time to parent things around. So the chest is going to be the father, if we can say it that way, for the arms. All right, so you should see the connections and the relation lines for them. All right, the parent is going to be the chest. And right now I have not named anything at all, although we should always rename our bones first. But in my case, I don't want to do that because I want to make sure that everything is happening the way it should be. Right click, and then you're going to select swap, or rather switch positions. That way the correct and appropriate direction is parented to the chest bone. All right, so obviously we have to identify the names of the bones. So not in this case, bone number 10 is the neck, and we can see the pelvis here. It's bone number 7. This one right here, the hip, is bone 07, and the pelvis is going to be the father of the hips, of course. This is natural anatomy. So let's check this out. I'm going to be moving this bone first in pose mode. All right, it's working perfectly. But now the feet also need to be parented. Obviously, if you go into object mode, everything is going to move because the armature is just one element. But in reality, you should be able to move the root bone and everything should follow without any distortion, without any scaling, or without any rotations that may seem weird. So let's continue parenting. I'm parenting now this controller, which was, hanging in the air basically, and it's going to be parented to the root bone. Although I think the best thing to do here is that controller, that wrist controller, is parented to the chest. So that way, when the chest rotates, the arm will move, and also the wrist and the hands. I think that's the most logical thing. But let's just try this right now. For the sake of the demonstration, I'm just parenting every floating bone or controller directly to the root bone. I just want to know if it moves or not. Now I'm going to create a new shape, and in that shape I'm going to be placing it into a new collection. I'm going to press XA to delete the internal faces. And now, since I am on edit mode, I'm going to scale. Press A to select everything. Press S to scale. And now I'm going to, oh come on, let me switch this off. Alright, so, okay, here we go. I'm going to extrude, press E, and then press G, or rather directly E, and move into the Y axis. So you can press Y to lock it into that axis. Now I'm going to press K for the knife, and then I'm going to constrain it by pressing C on the angle constraint. If you can see down in the status bar, very, very low in the screen right here, you can read what each button does when you enter the knife selection tool, or I'm sorry, the knife tool. You have different ways of interacting with the tool, different shortcuts, and everything you need to know, it's on the status bar. So I'm going to press C again so that it will get axis constraint, or rather angle constraint, sorry. So I'm scaling this in the x-axis. I'm pressing B to box select everything, scale, and since this is a flat shape, obviously it's going to scale in the x-axis. So now that this circle is completed, I'm going to be selecting this with this color for the viewport display. I'm going to move this into a new collection called controllers, and I'm going to move the previous circle, or rather the previous controller we created, into this collection. So as you can see, you have either choice, or you see the meshes colored or the grease pencil colored. Now that's something to have in mind. Okay, so the viewport display for this bone specifically, in pose bone, you go to the bone properties, and the viewport display, you can select it for that shape. So again, I'm going to rotate this so that you can see the correct orientation. So I think I'm going to do it by hand. Okay, so that's 90 degrees upwards. There we go. Going back into my rig, I'm going to switch off the controllers layers, or rather, I'm sorry, the collection, because I don't want to see this shape here. And now I see my grease pencil object working correctly. So let's save this before anything bad happens. All right. Whoops. Our shaded layer was left behind. No problem. Enter edit mode, press G to grab this, and try to match it onto the top of the shape of the Spiderman. So we already know how this thing goes, and obviously one of the aligning parameters that we're going to have are going to be his feet. And later on, obviously, apply the clipping mask. Perfect. So now we have Spiderman correctly shaded. And now we're going to activate all of these choices to see the reference. Look at that. Oh my, how blurry, how awful it was before. But now we have totally rescale it to 2019. It looks amazing. Alright, so I'm going to press 0 on the numpad, which is going to give me my camera view, and then I'm going to press render directly from viewport. But if I do that, you need to have a clear difference between rendering from the viewport directly and rendering from the render engine. If you press F12, you get the render engine. So our next step, now that we have completed the rigging process, is finally be able to skin it, or rather work with the weights on the character. So in our case, we're going to select first the Spiderman, then the armature, then press Ctrl P, and then select with automatic weights. And what it's going to do is going to shoot rays in every direction. It's going to detect vertices, and then it's going to assign them into a vertex group value. Okay? So that's how armatures work here in Blender. And you can see that for each individual grease pencil layer that we have, we need to work individually all those weights. So the first thing that we're going to do then is to work with Spiderman color layer and switch off with the eye visibility that other layer. And you can see that the vertex group inherit their names from the bones. Now this would be an amazing time to start writing the names of our bones. Okay, by the way, let me finish drawing something here, or maybe you can go back to your editable file, but right now we're concentrating ourselves into painting, distributing the weight paint for the influences of the bones in this mesh. So remember that the root bone does not deform, so uncheck that. And check that all the other bones that are controllers do not deform. So let's start naming everything. This is going to be called leg R. This is going to be called hip R. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. Bone hip R, much better. Let's continue with the rest of the bones. Now we're going to name the foot, bone foot R. And in the same way, we're going to make the exact same name, except that we're going to write an underscore L, which means or stands for left. Perfect. So now we have our chest bone, our neck bone, our upper arm R, our arm R, which has an IK controller. I'm sorry, an IK constraint, and obviously a controller, and a pole target as well. So let's name this all accordingly so that you can manipulate and work with the weights. So I'm going to go now into the weight. Let me save this. So you should save your file as well. Select the Spiderman and then parent it once again. Okay? So I don't want to name the armature because something weird may happen. So I'm going to leave the armature name as it is. And then we're going to go into weight paint mode. And of course, we see that both layers need to have attention. Now, if I paint the weights, it will paint throughout the complete layers. But in my case, and because we're doing this for the first time, if you're watching this video, then I want you to go easy on this so you can understand this from the beginning. Alright, we have walked through a lot of concepts, so if you are still here and checking this video out, I really thank you very much because that's the kind of support that really keeps me going. Thank you so much. That's the kind of things that I really appreciate, so I want to give my 200% into every video I put out here. So the content that you will see, it's something that you may try as well for experience or for hobbies or for real world experience. I personally would love to animate and rig another Marvel vs. Capcom character because those are really awesome designs, back from the first arcade machine. Those are amazing. Okay, so the thing that we're going to do here is going to select a vertex group that is going to influentiate every other vertices around it, vertex around it. So what's going on here? We're painting, and the most influence the vertex have, the redder the color is. Okay, so yellow, it's kind of a 50% influence. Green is kind of like 80% influence. I'm sorry, green is 50%. Yellow is around 60 or 70%. Okay, all the way to red. So blue means absence of influence. And you can see the blue lines there. Now, Spider-Man's costume is really making it hard for us to see how much influence these have. So let me switch that tint, the color tint of the red suit, of the red tint. You can do that live. Oh, by the way, let me switch this name. And what we want to do is to select the red tint color and lower it to a darker hue. So that way when we're painting, the original red color in the weight will show up with a contrasty matter. So I'm selecting the group, the vertex group, the pelvis, and of course what areas that is going to be affecting. So far so good. If you're doing this part right now, should be proud of yourself. Not many people grasp the concept of weight painting at the first try, but you have managed to rig this character. You have managed to weight paint this character, and also create materials. And obviously, this is all going towards one objective, which is to animate the Spider-Man. So thank you very much for trying this file. Thank you very much for trying this video. And let's see if we can complete this by switching here on the list. We can check how much influence the rest of the vertex group bones have. So you should end up with a Spider-Man that looks like this. So I'm skipping all that process, so you can see how it should really be looking. Okay, fantastic. So here we have finished to paint the influence with red or 100 influence to the parts of the body that were influenced by those bones. So let's go back to object mode, and now let's prepare the viewport to render our animation. And for that, let's save the file first. And for that, we're going to switch again to pose mode, because in this time we're going to worry about the animation. So let's just quickly try this. Perfect. I think it's working. Let's rotate this. Of course, this is going to be okay. The parent of the chest is going to be the pelvis. I mean, that's just obvious. Alright, so let's rotate this. Oh, perfect. It's working. Oh my goodness. It looks good. It looks amazing. But if you can see, the hand is not moving. So that controller must be assigned to the chest as well. And also the pole target. So again, let's go into edit mode. And he is the parent of that elbow. The elbow now has the parent, the chest. Okay, so, and obviously the hand controller, this one, will have as parent the chest as well. Alright, so let's test it out. Pose mode, Let's select the chest or the hips. Yes, marvelous. Look at that. This is perfect. It moves amazingly. Now, I intended this video to be a little bit shorter. Oh my goodness, there's a mistake right there on the shady shadow part. So let's go back. I'm going to go into object mode to select the Spider-Man, the grease pencil object, and then into weight paint, and then finally navigating into the shadow shade layer. And then, of course, I'm going to be selecting, I think it was called head 1. Yes, right there, head 1. I'm painting this rather in red, or more influence rather, so that it will not be left behind. I think with this will do. Alright, so let's see. I'm going to go into pose mode. We can see we have different scenes right here. I have created this scene which was previously shaded, now it's rigged, so let me switch that to an appropriate name. And of course, just like I mentioned before, you can switch the background if you're working in a extreme scene of fire, or probably the afternoon or the golden hour, I don't know. Maybe he's in a dark forest and it's bluish and cold. We don't know. But what you should know is that Blender, it's an amazing tool that can bring the 3D content as well as 2D content into the same screen. And you can work with native tools to create such wonderful things. Alright, so this is the rig. It's ready to be animated. And we're so happy for it because we just passed the hour and we have our character ready to go. So let's go to the timeline, because that's where you animate. And let's subdivide this into a dope sheet and also as the graph editor in the lower part of the screen. The way you animate is by selecting a bone in pose mode and then press I so that you can insert a location and rotation key. There you will see the abbreviation lock rot. That's what it means, location and rotation. So I hope if you create something with this, or probably this will inspire you to create something being rigged in this way with grease pencil, I hope that you can tag me or something, or you can send the reference video for the things that you create here in the comments below. Don't forget to comment what parts you did understand, what parts were difficult. Don't forget to comment what kind of character you would like to create with this approach or with this kind of setup. Now remember, we haven't created an entire body or an entire normal rigging T-pose human. We've just directly put the bones as the pose of Spider-Man was, and from there on we just slightly move it, like in this way, okay? Because we're trying to replicate that special moment when Spider-Man on Marvel vs. Capcom 1, stood in front of the camera as is his custom, and then just automatically flashes that camera to get that juicy scoop of news for the Daily Bugle. So here we're going to try to imitate that behavior by moving the controllers that we have for the feet, for the hips, for the chest, for the hand, for the head. So those are the basic controllers. If you download this file and you're reviewing this video, don't forget that the controllers or the parts that you can actually move are the chest, the hip, the pelvis, the wrist, and the neck. You should not be moving anything else. Although you can try, although you can experiment, there's nothing wrong with that. You can even grab a lattice and deform that lattice with additional bones. That's an idea I saw somewhere on Twitter. Shouts to the creator of that idea. I don't exactly remember the username, but it was an excellent idea. I think I remember that someone did a Hilda drawing. Hilda or Matilda. I don't remember the name. That series that is on Netflix looks amazing in 2D. Anyway, so we're going to go for the camera. Now the same thing we're going to apply here. We're going to start with a grease pencil object. I'm going to be using the splining tool so I can draw freely the the spider webs, and I'm going to create a little box with a constant emission, or rather a direct emission with a dark color for the body of the camera. And of course, later on, I'm going to be parenting that to the spider web. And I put the origin point all the way at the top, and I just moved the web all the way down. So that way I can have a center of gravity all the way to the top. So the camera is parented to that grease pencil object, which in turn has its origin all the way to the top. And finally, we can talk about effects. There are a lot of effects here for grease pencil. So if you select the object and then you come to the effects tab, you also have modifiers as well, but I'm not going to be using them because this video is already 1 hour and 10 minutes long. It takes a lot of time of editing this. Practically, I've been here a lot of hours, and I'm going to be selecting this as the rim light because we need to keyframe when the camera shoots the picture. It will be an exact moment, an exact keyframe when the camera is drawing back, is dolling back, okay, zooming out rather, and we're gonna have this moment where the camera snaps the picture and the flashlight goes to Spider-Man. So that way, so that effect, I'm sorry, is going to be created by using the rim effect here on the effects in the grease pencil object. So we're going to offset it first, and then we're going to place it back into 0 position. That way, when we play it forwards, it's going to go like a natural flash. Watch. Oh, by the way, you can also create an additional light source that it obviously is not a light because in 2D you need to fake a lot of things. So we can create a fake light with any object. Specifically, I'm going to create this one with an empty object, okay? And that light has the property to illuminate the characters. As you can see right here, you can raise the power of that light, and it's going to get an influence all around that area. It's fantastic. Look at that. It looks like a real flash. And I should be using this, but due to time's constraint, I need to be finishing and wrapping up this tutorial in just some more minutes. Okay, so you got everything you need to know. You now know how to rig a 2D grease pencil character fully created inside Blender, and you know how to join the vertex points. You also know how to delete whenever you have cross sections for lines that you don't really like using the knife tool or rather the cut tool on the draw mode. And then finally, you can set up your scene. Obviously, from here on, you can take it on because you need to output this onto any directory you want. And obviously, you need to check here on the film tab that you have transparency enabled, and obviously check for the format that you're going to be using. I always use PNG 16-bit transparency to make sure that I get the best quality from the renders. And of course, finally you go to view and then render from viewport like you saw a second ago. Thank you very much. This is Pierre Schiller. It's been a pleasure to have guided you finally through this complete walkthrough in grease pencil. I don't think I left anything behind. And of course, you can finally enjoy your creation directly from Blender.